All right, we're hot. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for Unlocking Value, and where we're going to answer the question, is your 3PL making the investments to help you? I'm Josh Allen. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at ITS Logistics. I've got a couple friends with me here. I've got Craig Pettit here, Executive Director of International Logistics and Compliance from Bridgestone. And I've got my friend here, Mike Sadak, Senior Manager, Supply Chain at Amazon. So the topic du jour is investments. And, if you think about it, it's almost nonsensical sometimes when you think about the market that we've been in as transportation logistics professionals for the last 2 years. Very, very difficult to think about investments. However, we believe, certainly at ITS Logistics, that our investments in capacity, technology, people, and culture have helped us grow 30% last year in volume and north of 20% this year. So in a tough market, we feel really, really good about it. The thing that we don't know is, what do shippers think? We feel like it's a pretty good idea to invest in all these things, but I found myself preparing for today and preparing for this conference and hoping to get some perspective from some other people as to, what you think about investments in, those three categories. So, to get us started, let's talk capacity first. For several years now at ITS, we've been investing in kind of a multifaceted offering of capacity. So you think about continuing to invest in our DC network, continuing to invest in our fleet, specifically our trailer fleet that we execute a power-only solution, and then also in the selective opportunities we invest in power units. But, it seems that it's playing very well for us, but I don't know. That's why I'm going to have you guys answer the question. So Craig, as you think about investments in capacity specifically, from a 3PL perspective, whether you're talking about it in your role today or maybe even previous history, where do you think 3PLs ought to be investing in capacity?
I really think it's a balancing act. Not going too heavy on one side or the other, but to serve your customers, you really have to have that agility. So I believe you do have to have key assets in certain areas, but again, really balancing where you have those, not going too overload on one or the other. I'm kind of agnostic to it, just as long as you can service me. I really don't care if you have to borrow it, rent it, lease it, own it. But it would make good practice, like what ITS has done for us, just having that nimble footprint, access to warehousing, access to assets. If we have to move stuff quickly, that's one of the benefits of working with ITS that I've found over the time, is just that ability to be nimble because you have those assets in place.
Very cool. Mike, what do you think? I mean, you have a unique perspective because, in your history as a buyer at Amazon, and then, now you have a different role, but you have the opportunity to think about it through multiple lenses, yep. Both as a buyer as well as being on the 3PL side in your history. So when you think about investments in capacity for 3PLs, what perspective do you have?
Yeah, similar to Craig there, I think that balance and nimbleness through there. Obviously, Amazon does expect a lot of their vendors, their carriers in our network, and Amazon themselves, and invest in a lot of different equipment through there. But I think you find out where it makes sense most, with the warehousing, with power units, with trailers, ships, whatever it may be through there. But I think with our conversations, what we've had through there, I think the expectations of technology, the people, the culture, and the equipment. Because honestly, I'd hate to be, the person that has to deal with our forecasting, because it's all over. As you know, it takes a lot to get to your packages to the door within same day through there, and kind of peek behind the curtain. Flexibility is huge, and it's consistent change as well. through there. So I think it is that delicate balance, to make things work. And at our level too, obviously Amazon being so big, but also being on the other side, being a 3PL through there, I think you know and understand that. And you see the value of, hey, we'll put the investment in where it makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. So as just a follow-up, specifically because both of you have depth in international and in drayage procurement, I'm curious, what's your take on, 3PLs and their investments in chassis, and perhaps even in chassis pool? How valuable is that to you? Craig, maybe you first.
I mean, it can be very valuable at points when things start to stack up and go sideways. You want to have that, again, that flexibility to be nimble to, we have chassis so we can get the boxes on chassis, we can move them around. We're not waiting for a certain carrier to have the assets ready for that. So to me, that's really important in our business. I mean, we import, I think we handle 40,000 FEU imports a year.
Whew.
So, I mean, we have to be nimble, just to get rid of the detention, be able to move stuff in and out. I mean, we've got a pretty good relationship with our carriers, but still, they're going to charge you if you're renting space on their cans.
Like, what do you think?
In our approach, I guess, with, coming from the ocean and the drayage side through there, I mean, we opted to have our own pool of chassis that are utilized by our carriers. Investment, obviously, through when COVID hit, a lot of things changed through there, but just due to the ridiculous volumes that we'd have and the fluctuations, it made more sense for us to invest in that and allowing our carriers to then access that pool of chassis through there. So we never had too many issues with shortages there. It was just one of those that Amazon felt it was the best for us from a cost perspective, and working with our carriers directly. And I think it. There's other intricacies that go into it, but it just makes the most sense for our setup to have our own pool.
That makes sense. It kind of helps being an importer of, I don't know how many boxes you had at Amazon, but significant,
Yes.
to say the least, right?
Yes.
Well, very good. So let's move on. I love the conversation about capacity. I think that it's an interesting topic because, certainly as somebody that has lived in 3PLs where we've had assets, we've not had assets, threading the needle on having the agility, having the flexibility in your brokerage, and then also being able to weave some of those assets later on for, complex opportunities has been extremely valuable. But as I said, let's move on. Let's talk about technology for a minute. And, we can go several different directions here, but, for me, I love this topic. And, frankly, it wasn't that long ago that, we were all talking about how digital freight brokerages, digital forwarders, digital warehousing, virtual warehousing companies were going to destroy, the traditional businesses that have been in a marketplace for, decades. And, aside from some murmurs, aside from a few conversations, for me, I don't really hear those conversations, and I don't see those articles nearly as much as I used to. So, I guess the question becomes, I guess, what's cool? And what technology should we be investing in for the future? And, I'll give you my take at ITS. We have taken the stance of investing in our technology that empowers our people. It makes them better. It makes them more productive. Subsequently, they're able to further their careers even more. But really, the tech focused on becoming a toolkit for our professionals to be able to service our customers and then service providers as well. So if you think about our development of Container AI, simply we were trying to build a better product on the floor for ourselves. We needed to solve for better data, better visibility. And so as a result, we had this thing that we built, and there was an opportunity to share it with the world, or at least some version of the world. And it works. It works both externally, it works internally. But I guess, Craig, from your perspective, when you think about technology investments from a 3PL perspective, or anybody that is going to be a service provider for you, what do you feel like they should be building?
Good question. I mean, it's very applicable to what you have stated, something that you can use internally and externally. Being on the import side, on the drayage side, it's a key portion of visibility. It's pretty easy to track a ship. There's enough platforms out there that do that, but really that time when it gets off the boat, gets out gated at the port and getting to the DC is some of the more critical time. Where's my stuff? And working with you, you guys have built that platform and that feeds our, enterprise platform is what we use it for. So I think really the visibility of where's my stuff at and how you can measure that to see carrier performance, where they are. Also, stuff gets lost, contrary to the popular belief. I mean, stuff gets misplaced and stuff, and if you're tracking something critical, I think, that's important to have that in place. So I think you guys are on the right path. I'm a big fan of visibility, how it can cut down workload on your employees rather than going to carrier websites, calling people, texting people. Like if you got it right at your fingertips, it's just a lot easier to work with, especially with the younger generation. I think they really appreciate that.
Very cool. And just quickly, as a follow-up to that, I feel like the conversations that I have internally or externally, many occasions it turns into, should we be building customer-facing tools? Should we be building external-facing tools where, the early versions, several years ago were, the trucks moving across the screen. Okay, great. And then containers moving across the screen, boats moving across the water, versus sending you data or building the capability to transmit data in a very elegant and effective way. I don't know, as you think about it, and certainly for other folks in here, what do you think about that from a 3PL investment? Should we be building external facing products, or should we be investing more so in data?
Yes. Really depends on the shipper. I mean, like somebody our size that's, we've got 150,000 employees, plants all over the world. For us, it's, we can't just have one rely solely on your visibility. You only handle certain countries. My team span all the Americas, so we have to work off different systems. So really, as a shipper my size, the point I'm getting to is somebody like a Four Kites or Project 44, that's very applicable to us. We have to feed data into that, and you're a piece of the data. But for a smaller shipper, some of the other companies I work for, your external-facing tool might be just fine what they need. So I think it's really gauged on the customer on what their needs are. But yes, I think both are important. And knowing that you have the data to feed your own customer-facing tool, you should be able to easily do both.
That makes sense. So Mike, same question, but, we'll take it back a step and start from the beginning. So when you think about, and perhaps when you thought about in your role as procuring, transportation and interacting with service providers, from a technology standpoint, what do you wish they would have been building, or what are you perhaps happy that they were building along the way to become a better service provider for you?
Yeah, I think with us, and it's like Craig mentioned, due to the size, we want them to be able to build things that already integrate to our systems. You have, versus having so many to go to, it is key to funnel everything into one system within Amazon, so everyone can physically see that. North America, Europe, whatever it may be through there. So I think that's absolutely critical to have that. Now, if I'm looking at some of the other, I wasn't involved with some of the build outs, thankfully, with some of the carriers through there, but there's still some way to go. But I can't think of one thing like to say, oh, this carrier, did this well. I think it's just the standard integrations and the EDI functionality between there that would feed our system. So you're getting the the key metrics, the key data, the in-out data, because when you're dealing with drayage and ocean, just with the detention, demurrage, everything, it's just so critical. So I think having the gate out activity and everything in place and updated correctly is what, it was an absolute requirement for a carrier to work with us. So if they're going to be onboarded and work with us, that you had to have 100% done. So.
Interesting. And then as you think about, your adventure that you're on now, and, you're thinking about it through the lens of, 3PL investments through Amazon Freight. What do you think are maybe some of the most important things? Make sure you check the boxes.
Oh, in my current role, not
Yes.
taking my shipper hat off through there?
Yeah.
I think investing in your operating systems and your technology, but your people, I think, and we'll get a little more into culture, I know, through there, but I think how critical, it doesn't matter how much you've done a certain role through there, if you don't have the right tools and the tech to do that, I mean, it's easy to fail. I think as now we kind of mentioned with making your job easier, taking minutes out of your day, empowering your employees to do that. So I think in my, the current role, that is the biggest thing that I'm working on is really getting that tech to line up with what we're doing, to be long-term and be, a world-class organization.
Yeah, fair enough. So one topic that is consistently brought up in our organization and, and with some of my peers, we talk about this frequently, and there's been this growing opportunity and capability of API rating and getting into, TMSs and pushing rates into, customers' native TMS to be able to execute. And, we've taken a stance on, what we think about that. And certainly, those aren't easy to build. Those require significant investment dollars in order to build. But I guess from your perspective, either one of you really, do you have an opinion on, consuming API rates? And is it something that 3PLs should be investing in?
I'll let you go first, because that's really not my wheelhouse.
That's not your bag of tricks, really.
So to kind of through there, we're consuming the carrier rates
Electronically. Spot rates electronically.
electronically. I think from the contract rate, I can tell on our side, I wish we had more of that because of the intricacies when you're talking with payables, to have that rate matching and doing less manual auditing. I think that should be something, especially when you do it at the volumes that we do it at. I think the time spent internally on and working with your vendor on getting the rates right. I mean, it could be if it's manual, it's tough.
Yep.
I mean, you waste, you waste a lot of time and effort going through there. So I'm a big fan of that, especially the automation, anything you can do to automate with your payables and lining up with your contracted rates and various things. I mean, I think back to our days, if you have the barcoded, things just boom, boom, boom works. I think the automation on that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think it's always a big topic. It's strong debate. I'm sure there's probably 10 people in the room could stand up here and argue either side of it, of what speed might do for you in a spot environment. You can also talk about the fact that you're inviting commoditization into your life. And so that can be tricky, but I guess the bottom line is if you're standing behind the service, then, perhaps it's applicable. But I guess, it's a debate for another day. Anybody wants to join in on that debate later, hit me up. I think we can have some fun with it. All right, people and culture. So, I think the saying goes, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't know what to think about that, especially because I had strategy in my title once in my career. So, I think it hurts my feelings a little bit if I'm being honest. But I think generally organizations throw around these words very easily, and we kind of slap them around as corporate initiatives and that sort of thing. But do you really buy into it? do your organizations really buy into it? And are you investing in people and in their careers? And, do you say the words that you are taking responsibility for people's livelihoods and their futures and their future careers and perhaps even, their kids? We believe at ITS it's absolutely non-negotiable. We absolutely have to drive team first. We have to invest in our people. We have to make sure that we are advocates for their careers and the betterment of their families. And so, once you grab hold of it and once you get on board, it's actually pretty fun. Those are pretty exciting words to say, and we get very passionate about it inside the office. Craig, I know culture is extremely important at Bridgestone. So maybe talk about how culture, this is kind of interesting, but how culture both internally at Bridgestone kind of makes life better, and then also how can you discern or how can you consume culture maybe from some of your vendors? How do you pick that up? Does it show up in their service? What do you think?
Yeah, I think for us, it's very important. I mean, let's face it, all of us, if you have teams, I mean, your number one asset is your people over anything. So really seeing them bond, I always look at, because, I'm a shipper, I'm not a logistics company. We've got very skilled people that know logistics very well, but, we aren't the ones moving the stuff all the time. We don't own boats. We don't own, well, we used to own trucks, but now we don't. But really, I always say a service provider such as ITS or a flex porter or an Expeditors or anybody is really just an extension of my supply chain team. So there has to be that linkage, working with them closely. They should fit what we need, but also the people dimension has to fit. And I also think that the technology has to work with both sides too, especially with the younger generations. I mean, we've got a heavy intern program from UT because we're based here in Nashville. So I would say half of our workforce, permanent workforce, is UT graduates. So we really pick people, work with the universities to create that culture, what they're doing, and also work with our suppliers, so to speak, whether it be a carrier, a freight forwarder, any of that, that there must be that connection with the teams together.
Very cool. What do you think, Mike?
It's probably the biggest thing in business. I think I pride myself on it personally and professionally. I think, one thing, pleasure of working at Amazon, I think you mentioned, Josh, the balance and just investing in someone's livelihood. They're, just so much outside of their just individual role. And I think that's huge. I think, with sustainability, other things, thinking big picture and, the climate pledge is Amazon looks to partner with like-minded vendors, but I take it that step further. I mean, I never assume just because we're Amazon, you got to do everything and expectations to do whatever. I mean, they have to trust the person and the company just as much through there. So I think, culture, it's just so huge. I think in working with other like-minded companies that know and understand your business and are going to put the effort in, and vice versa, and us as well. I think it's critical for you to kind of, walk it as well.
Do you find any ways to specifically detect culture or investment in people with, vendors that you might have had in a previous life, or, perhaps even how you might interact with vendors today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the standard things, you're looking at credit, you're looking at checks. I mean, there are a lot of things and red flags you can see by how it's handled top down, and just individually and how you're working on the ground level. I mean, I grew up in the expedited industry, so service, I mean, I still kind of have that mentality of shutdown material, and it's just the expectations are high. So it's as you come in there, you set those expectations, make them very clear, and I think at least for me, after you've been doing it for so long, you get a feel for the things you look for. I guess those red flags are things that are like, all right, something's up here. But it goes well beyond credit ratings and various other things, but it all contributes to the bigger picture.
Yeah, that makes sense. Craig, anything from your end, any way that you perhaps detect
I think
it?
Like Mike said, I mean, it's very, just the feel of it, meeting with them, having face-to-face, understanding through the bidding process who they are, like what type of outfit they are. Are they going to go the extra mile for you? If, I look at stuff, sometimes I need something hot, and I have a particular ocean carrier that I will go to that will bump other people to get my stuff on, because he takes me over that top, and that's the kind of guy I want working for me, somebody that values the business relationship, and the company does and the teams do.
Makes sense. So, from my standpoint, I'm only 10 months on the job at ITS, and it's been a great experience so far, and having a whole heck of a lot of fun. One thing that I've been taken aback by is people externally, whether it's just colleagues, whether it is customers, whether it's providers, doesn't really matter. Folks comment all the time about our activity and how our culture appears on LinkedIn and then externally, other messages. And I thought that's kind of cool. I never had that feedback before in my previous career opportunities. And so something new, but certainly valuable for me. And I give a tip of the hat to our marketing department as they're pulling that off extremely well. Any chance you guys get feedback about your own presence online and, folks saying one thing or another about culture?
I don't know. I mean, you probably see a lot of things through Amazon. I mean, obviously bad and good through there. I mean, but you control the controllables and, what I can do to affect my team and my org, and how that's seen in the community and internally and whatever it may be. I mean, I can do a lot to affect that, but I think you'll see a little bit of both for Amazon in the news.
That makes sense. Okay, so listen, this has been a pretty quick conversation, and we don't have significant depth, beyond, there's three big rocks we talked about. But, really, I'd like both of you guys to, provide, your number one recommendation. If you were to pick one thing that, logistics or supply chain companies should be investing in, what would it be? And so, Craig, why don't we start with you?
One thing.
You can have 5 if you want to. We got plenty of time.
I
right?
think you have to invest in capabilities, technology, people, and even assets to a point. I mean, I think you have to have a balancing act, and it's got to all come down to being agile in this world that we live in now. I mean, we're dealing with, I wasn't going to get into this, but we're dealing with, something that I would consider, for at least my company, is pretty much catastrophic at this point. If the strike goes on tonight and how long it goes. I mean, so just having that experience, having the people that understand it, how we can shift and be nimble, and those partners to help us do it is key, especially in the environment we live in now, supply chain world.
That makes sense. The trifecta, then, you've got to have all of it.
Yeah, it's got to be a balancing act of all. You can have all the people, but if you don't have technology, it's not going to really help that much.
So scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling about this? You feeling like it is catastrophic, like it is, as my 13-year-old daughter would say, mid or low?
I mean, you really don't know. I mean, from what I've seen, it could get pretty nasty from the signals we're seeing. So, but based on what I've stated, I feel like my company, that my team has mitigated 70% of our risk at this point, because we've been prepared. We understand it. We're using our tools, technologies, and partners.
Fair enough.
So we've done as much as we can do.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, when you talk about being prepared for what potentially is going to happen, which we were talking earlier, it's still blowing my mind that this is going down. So super interesting night tonight, and tomorrow morning there'll be lots of chatter. I'm surprised that it's not top of mind for everybody, but not everybody is affected in drayage international. That's for sure. But when you think about your preparedness, when you think about diverting or changing supply chains, can you talk just a little bit more about how you are preparing for this potential impact?
Well, I mean, specifically on the export side, pumping as much out as we could ahead of time, like pushing as much as we could. We also went and signed several contracts with niche carriers, where there's terminals that are operated that on the east and Gulf Coast that are not under ILA labor. So we're using those heavily. We add those, again, going back to your partnerships, the relationships where you can pull strings. Really using that and, pivoting, telling your origins, like, all right, we're going to shift to West Coast, we're going to shift to Halifax, those type of things way up front as we saw this coming. I mean, you can't do a knee-jerk because we didn't know this was actually going to happen, but you can at least take partial hot items, stuff like that, and put it to a place that's safer. It's going to cost a little bit more, but you might avert a disaster. As we're a manufacturing company too. If I don't have natural rubber and stuff to build tires, a plant goes down, it's very costly. And that could have ripple effects. General Motors, Ford, and Toyota could go down because I don't have tires to give to them. So there's a lot of calculations happening up front. So good thing is we've been through this rodeo before now, every year, some sort. So we have a flavor on how to do it.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, Mike, so what's your suggestion for 3PLs out there making investments in their future? What should they be doing?
I think it's keying on your customer base too, and I think basing it on that, that's going to be critical because I realize that an Amazon or a Bridgestone, that may not be, the ideal setup for your, for a 3PL, their size or scope or where they want to go. So I think that above all is key. Find out who your key customers are, who you're going to work with and tailor to that. So if I look at someone that, when it was ocean or drayage space, invest on that, but it's the technology, and with the flexibility to be able to turn on a dime, when situations like this happen. I think it's having those partnerships, being able to accommodate an Amazon or a Bridgestone when these things happen. Hey, if this does happen, we need you to do this, and what can you do for us there? So I think you need the tech, you need the people, with that flexibility through there. And I think the culture is huge too. I think I probably kind of go in those orders through there, obviously with tech, maybe tech equipment people, maybe equipment people kind of swap those a little bit there. But I think that'd be the biggest thing. Figure out your strategy up front because that's going to dictate what you're going to do. Fair enough. So I don't know that I have suggestions for 3PL investments. I can tell you a little bit about what's worked for us, and I think that's great. I more so have an ask of the community from an investment standpoint, and that is continue to invest in information sharing and technologies and band together to thwart theft. It's a huge thing. It is, I don't know that it's been crippling for some customers and shippers. Some shippers don't have freight that necessarily works on the black market. Good for them. But for many, it is a huge, huge topic. And us together as a community, I think it works. I think us coming together as a fabric to protect shippers, manufacturers, distributors out there from having their products stolen, I think is a very, very good thing. Secondly, investing in data and the ability to share data, use data in order to enhance your business, I think is just is a no-brainer. And if you think about the data and you think about making investments in your business, well, it should tell you where you should invest and perhaps where you shouldn't. Because, for me, in order to create trailer pools, in order to invest in DCs, in order to listen to your customers and then go invest in assets, well, you got to know the numbers. And you have to know how to invest, how to create returns, and then how to win. And it should feed itself, but you have to know what you're getting into first. So that's my suggestion. And with that is a wrap. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much, Craig. See you guys on the floor.